In 2016, California wife and mother Sherry Papini disappeared for 22 days. When she was found, she told authorities a detailed account of being kidnapped and tortured. Years later, in a stunning twist, Papini pled guilty to making false statements about what happened to her, setting off a media firestorm. Now, for the first time, Sherry Papini is telling her side of the story and revealing shocking new information. Sherry Papini, Caught in a Lie, an ID documentary event, Monday, May 26th at 9 on ID. Set your DVR. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 266 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what's up with you?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How about you?
I am doing great.
Yeah?
You and I just got done recording our weekly Patreon video and audio.
We did.
We talked about some updates and a couple of recent cases, the Annecy murders on Unsolved.
Yeah.
There's been an update with Luca Magnotta. Kind of went over some of that stuff. We also talked about what we've been watching.
We did.
Speaking of Patreon, let's go ahead and give our shout outs. We had Shirley Renner.
Hey, Shirley.
Angela May.
What's going on, Angela?
Justin Ware.
Hey, Justin.
Brandy Scott.
Well, thank you, Brandy.
Yolandi Venter.
Hey, Yolandi.
Kayla Gibson Martin jumped out at our highest level.
What's going on, KGM?
Franny Chard.
Hey, Franny.
Bree.
What's going on, Bree?
Jamie Johnson jumped out at our highest level.
Thank you, Jamie.
Belinda Tibbetts jumped out at our highest level.
Hey, Tibbetts.
Autumn Sweeney.
Hey, Autumn.
Jillian Smith.
What's going on, Jillian?
Helen KD.
Well, KD, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Danny Yeager.
Hey, Danny.
Blakely B. Craft jumped out at our highest level.
Well, thank you, B-Craft.
And last but not least, Dave Diggs.
What's going on, Dave?
And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs.
How far are we going to go back?
I say we go back as far as we possibly can.
Let's do it.
This week, we selected Lisa Yutko.
Hey, Lisa.
So a big shout out to all the new Patreon supporters, the people that continue to support us. On PayPal, we had donations from Jill Tevis.
Hey, Jill.
That was actually a very sizable donation.
It was awesome.
Lauren Porter.
Hey, Lauren.
Aubrey Eldridge.
Thank you, Aubrey.
And Benita Alaverde.
Alaverde.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks to all of you as well. Gibbs, right now on True Crime All the Time Unsolved, we have an episode out on Bryce Laspisa. And I think this is a case that a lot of people are going to find very interesting. There's a lot of mystery surrounding what happened to Bryce. And I think from fairly early on in the case, police believe that he intentionally drove his car off a cliff.
They do, yeah.
But obviously his body was never found. So, very mysterious.
The mystery builds.
But we'll get into everything, right? The details, the theories, the what ifs, all of that. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time?
I'm all ready.
We are headed to England to talk about killer nurse Beverly Allitt. I think, Gibbs, everyone knows, right, how much respect we have for nurses. We've talked about it time and time again. We always have, but I think that has even grown with what nurses have done over the past couple of years with COVID.
Oh, man, for sure.
But for me, I think as with any profession, there are always going to be some bad apples. And Beverly Allitt was a horrible one.
She was very bad.
In 1991, tragedy struck the Grantham and Kesteven Hospital in Lincolnshire, England. Infants and children on Ward 4 were dying at an alarming rate. And the two pediatricians on staff had differing opinions on the cause of the deaths. One believed that they were all just tragic coincidences, but the other believed that one of their own staff was harming these children. And it was the second doctor that turned out to be correct. He began an inquiry that would expose nurse Beverly Allitt as a serial killer.
So it's going to be a rough one.
It is going to be a rough one for a number of reasons. I mean, obviously, we're talking about children.
Right.
I think the other part of that equation is you're talking about a health care professional.
Sure.
And we put so much trust into those individuals.
We do.
Nurses, doctors. Most of us don't have the knowledge that it would take to look at something that's going on in a hospital or something and say, oh, you're not doing that correctly.
Right.
We haven't had that training. We don't have that information. So you kind of have to put all of your trust into these people. So when you have a story like this about a nurse, and we've had a number of them,
we have,
who decides to start killing people, it's a very scary proposition. And I think back to Donald Harvey. That was very, very early on in the podcast. I remember it scared me.
Sure.
Because of just thinking about how vulnerable you are sometimes when, you're laying in a hospital bed. Let's go back to you last year.
Yeah.
You were in and out of it.
I was.
At certain points in time. That's scary.
Yeah.
To not be conscious and think, well, okay, somebody could come in and mess with me and all that.
They can do whatever they wanted.
Beverly Gail Allitt was born on October 4th, 1968 in Corby Glen, a small village in Lincolnshire, England. She would grow up to become one of Britain's most notorious female serial killers. Beverly was one of 4 children, born to parents Richard and Lillian Allitt. Her siblings were Donna, Darren, and Allison. Richard worked as a deliveryman. By all accounts, she had a very normal childhood. There's no indication, Gibbs, that she experienced any abuse or significant trauma, but she exhibited concerning behavior from a young age. It was reported that Beverly often wore bandages and even casts over small or non-existent injuries. And she refused to let her parents examine these injuries.
Well, maybe she thought she knew best as a little kid. This is my boo-boo. I took care of it.
Yeah. I mean, you could think of that as strange. I mean, you could think of that as just kids doing what kids do. But Beverly was also aggressive towards other children. In her school, she was actually considered a bully.
Well, girls can be bullies too.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. It's not what we see most often, but I do remember in elementary school, there was a girl who kind of terrorized most of us.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't anything serious. It was more like she had grown faster than the rest of us.
Okay.
So she was bigger.
Right.
She was also faster.
Oh, yeah.
And she could chase us down and push us down and, that type of thing.
So the torment began.
Yeah, she didn't hurt anybody.
Yeah.
I don't have any long-lasting physical or emotional scars from it.
Okay.
But it was said that when Beverly didn't get the attention or the reaction she wanted from others, she became aggressive and lashed out.
That's not a good behavior to have.
From 1985 to 1991, Beverly spent a lot of time in hospitals seeking medical treatment for various injuries and illnesses. It was reported, Gibbs, that she even had an appendectomy when she didn't need it.
It's really strange.
Well, there's some strange stuff here, right?
Yeah.
Now, I think when you look at something like this, right? So she went into the hospital. She was complaining of abdominal pains and she requested the surgery. It kind of makes what she did as a younger child appear more strange with the casts and the bandages on injuries that weren't really there.
Right. Yeah.
But when surgeons opened her up, they found a perfectly healthy appendix. After the surgery, she interfered with her healing by damaging her surgical scar.
Just sounds like she really wanted the attention of medical professionals.
Or the attention of people.
Yeah.
Parents, other kids, who knows? But it got much, much worse. Beverly also hit her hand with a hammer. She pushed glass into her feet and injected liquid into her breasts.
Definitely see some issues here now.
There's definite issues, right? Go back to, it kind of screams wanting attention. You could also make the case that, maybe there was a part of it where she enjoyed hurting herself, because we know that that does occur.
Right.
But I'm kind of leaning more towards the doing it for the sake of getting attention. But there's no doubt that she was known for self-harming. And she also practiced what is called like doctor hopping, because, eventually doctors that you go to on a regular basis, they're going to catch on.
Well, sure they are. Yeah.
Nobody has all of this going on. And I think a lot of it is probably easy to spot that that it's self-inflicted.
Yeah. Here comes Beverly again.
Right. What is she going to have now?
Yeah.
And let's face it, doctors aren't dumb.
No.
Now, could you step on broken glass? Sure. Absolutely. Could you slam your hand in a car door? Absolutely. It's a little harder for me to explain the injection into your breasts.
Yeah.
You're not going to fall on 2 needles at the same time.
Exactly.
So, but I think the bottom line is doctors in town started catching on, and some of them refused to see her, especially if she wasn't displaying any obvious signs of illness or injury. So what she did was she began traveling out of town to continue getting treatment from doctors. And although she hadn't been diagnosed yet at this point in time, all these symptoms are consistent with Munchausen syndrome. Beverly later displayed symptoms of Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Munchausen syndrome was first described by Dr. Richard Asher in 1951. Dr. Roy Meadow was the first to describe Munchausen syndrome by proxy in 1977. Munchausen syndrome is a mental illness where an individual either fakes an illness or deliberately makes themselves sick in order to get attention from caretakers or medical professionals. The illness is named after German aristocrat Baron Munchausen, who was known for telling unbelievable tales about his exploits. Now, you are also known for telling unbelievable tales about your exploits.
I am.
They just don't have anything to do with injuries. Well, sometimes they do, but that's not the main focus.
Right. Yeah,
of them.
Yeah. I have my own syndrome.
You do. It's not been identified yet.
Right.
People with Munchausen syndrome fake psychological symptoms like visions or hallucinations. They often fake physical symptoms. They try to make themselves sick or request unnecessary surgeries and procedures. Hospital hopping is common, as is moving around, right? In order to continue visiting hospitals. No one knows exactly what causes Munchausen syndrome, but experts believe that emotional trauma, a personality disorder, or just a desire for attention are the main cause. In the reporting Gibbs, it talked about how women between the ages of 20 and 40 with a background in healthcare are the most common group to display these symptoms.
Really? Mm-hmm. I think with a background in healthcare probably benefits them.
It would benefit them from the point of knowing what symptoms to tell a doctor or
right.
a physician or something like that. The other thing that I found interesting is that unmarried white men between the ages of 30 to 50 are the next most common group.
Well, I guess if they were married, they were getting attention. So maybe being unmarried is part of the reason, right? Not getting attention, so they seek it out.
Maybe.
Ways.
Maybe. I don't know. Munchausen by proxy most often involves mothers and their children, but it can occur in other settings, as we'll see in this case. And really, Gibbs, the first thing that came to mind when we started talking about this was the case of Gypsy Rose Blanchard and the murder of Dee Dee, her mother. Very famous case. We did that case. But in that one, it really was the mom who kind of started all that and perpetuated it and kept it going. After finishing secondary school, Beverly went to nursing school, and it was here that she continued her concerning behavior. She once smeared feces on the walls of a nursing home where she was training.
Really gross.
Very gross. She also frequently missed her training because of various illnesses. Her boyfriend at the time later reported that she was aggressive, manipulative, and deceptive. She faked a pregnancy and faked being sexually assaulted before he ended the relationship.
So she definitely has some issues.
Yeah, she's got some issues for sure. And I still go back to, not only the illnesses, but now you're talking about faking a pregnancy, allegedly faking a sexual assault.
Right.
I still think that would all fall into kind of the bucket of wanting to get attention.
Sure it is.
Whether it's the illnesses, so you're getting the attention from doctors, or you're getting attention from people in your life because you're sick, they got to take care of you.
Yeah.
You get into faking a pregnancy and maybe faking a sexual assault. Okay. What are you looking for? If that's the truth,
yeah,
you're looking for sympathy from your boyfriend or your family or whatever. And I do say allegedly because obviously this is based on what he said.
Sure.
Despite her poor attendance and failing her nursing exam in early 1991, Beverly got a 6-month contract as a state-enrolled nurse at the Grantham and Kesteven Hospital in Lincolnshire. This was a hospital that was notorious for being understaffed. It's probably the very reason why they hired Beverly, even though she didn't technically have the proper qualifications. And it was at this job and at this hospital that she earned her infamous title, the Angel of Death. In total, Beverly killed 4 children and attempted to murder 9 others during her 59 days at the hospital. And no one suspected her until they noticed her nursing logs were missing. So you said it right up front, right? This is going to be a rough episode.
Sure it is.
4 children lost their lives. She attempted to kill 9 others in less than 2 months' time, or just right around 2 months' time.
What an animal.
Beverly worked in Ward 4, the children's ward. Usually there were only 2 day shift nurses and 1 night shift nurse working at a time. And Beverly was often left alone and unsupervised to care for the children on her ward. 2 doctors supervised Ward 4, Dr. Sharat Nana-Yakara and Dr. Frederick Porter. Dr. Nana-Yakara interviewed with the Real Crime documentary team. He said that his first impression of Beverly was, quote, nothing outstanding. She was a quiet, pleasant nurse who was always available to work. Okay, you can make a lot out of nothing outstanding.
Yeah.
That really kind of runs the gamut of, POS all the way up to barely competent,
right,
and kind of a lot of stuff in between.
She knew how to stand and breathe on her own.
That we know of.
Yeah.
And then, what do you take of this guy saying that she was always available to work?
That could be a good thing, but it also could be a bad thing, right?
Right. Normally you would say that about a good worker.
Right.
They're willing to step in when somebody's sick or this or that. Well, we know Beverly Allitt wasn't a good worker.
No.
So that kind of comment, she was always available to work. Well, why do you think that was?
Yeah.
Because she was doing some really heinous stuff, and either she wanted every opportunity to try to do it, or maybe she needed to be there every day
to
cover things up. Beverly's first victim was 7-month-old Liam Taylor. On February 21st, 1991, Liam was admitted to the children's ward for a chest infection. Beverly assured his parents that he was in capable hands and told them to go home and rest. When they returned to the hospital, Beverly informed them that Liam had experienced a respiratory emergency, but he had recovered. She even volunteered for an extra shift so that she could watch over him.
Well, she's just an outstanding nurse at this point.
Giving her time.
Yeah.
Liam's parents decided to spend the night at the hospital. And I get that. You do too. You and I have both been in that situation. I think especially if you got a 7-month-old, Well, you really don't want to leave.
No. You're going to have to throw me out
Right.
Put locks on the doors.
Now, the next night, Liam had another respiratory emergency, but doctors believed he would make a full recovery. When they left Beverly alone with him, his condition worsened. He became pale. He had red blotches on his face. Beverly called in an emergency resuscitation team, also called the crash team. Her colleagues were confused because Liam's alarm monitors didn't go off when he stopped breathing, but they had to put that aside, right? They had to focus on trying to save this little boy's life. But tragically, Liam suffered from cardiac arrest and severe brain damage. The doctors had to put him on life support. And on February 23rd, his parents made the difficult decision to take him off life support. His official cause of death was listed as heart failure. And Beverly Allitt was never questioned.
Well, this is a really sick lady. I mean, she could have murdered him and sadly it would have been over, but for him to be placed on life support, I don't know if that was her intention or not, but the reality is he was on life support and those parents had to make a very difficult decision.
And I can't get over the fact that we're talking about a 7-month-old child.
Yeah.
7 months. Her next victim was 11-year-old Timothy Hardwick, a boy with cerebral palsy and epilepsy. On March 5th, 1991, Timothy was admitted to the hospital after he had an epileptic fit. It was Beverly who took over his care. When she was alone with him, she called the emergency resuscitation team. Timothy had no pulse and he was turning blue. The emergency resuscitation team was unable to revive him. His autopsy found no obvious cause of death, so the pediatricians assumed epilepsy was his cause of death. And this goes back to something that I believe you said, but when you're talking about a nurse, you're talking about a medical professional. If that person makes the decision that they want to harm someone, they want to kill someone, who would have better knowledge on how to do that and possibly make it look as though it was something that you would see occur naturally in a hospital?
Yeah, sure. A nurse or a doctor, right?
And I'm sure it wasn't just a coincidence that she picked a boy who had cerebral palsy, who experienced epilepsy. I think she used that to her advantage to try to cover up what she did.
So in 2 short weeks, she's already murdered 2 kids.
Well, we know this story happens in a very short amount of time. All right, Gibbs, let's take a quick break. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. We talk about BetterHelp a lot on this show, and this month we're discussing some of the stigmas around mental health. For example, some people think you should wait until things are unbearable to go to therapy, but that simply is not true. Therapy is a tool to utilize before things get worse, and it can help you avoid those lows. And we've been taught that mental health shouldn't be a part of normal life. Well, that's wrong too. We take care of our bodies with the gym, we go to the doctor, we make sure that we're eating right. We should be focusing on our minds just as much. I have used BetterHelp, and I can honestly say that it is a great service. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. Give it a try and see why over 2 million people have used BetterHelp Online Therapy. True Crime All the Time listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/TCAT. That's BetterHelp.com/TCAT, TCATT. And next up is Bombas. Bombas' mission is simple. Make the most comfortable clothes ever and match every item sold with an equal item donated. So when you buy Bombas, you're also giving to someone in need. Bombas design their socks, shirts, and underwear to be the clothes you can't wait to put on every day. Everything they make is soft, seamless, tagless, and has a luxuriously cozy feel. They're made from super soft materials like merino wool, Pima cotton, and even cashmere, which makes them the perfect cozy winter layers. There's There's a pair of Bombas socks for everything you do. They come in tons of options. I like the low-cut athletic style. I wear them all the time. Bombas t-shirts are made with thoughtful design features like invisible seams, soft fabrics, and the perfect weight so that they hang just right. Bombas underwear has a barely there feel with second skin support that might make you forget they're even there in a good way. And socks, underwear, and t-shirts are the 3 most requested clothing items at homeless shelters. That's why Bombas donates one for every item you buy. So far, Bombas customers like you have helped donate over 50 million items of essential clothing. Go to bombas.com/TCAT and get 20% off any purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/TCAT for 20% off. Bombas.com/TCAT. 1-year-old Kaylee Desmond was admitted to the children's ward with a chest infection on March 3rd, 1991. She was recovering well. But on March 8th, while in Beverly's care, Kaylee went into cardiac arrest. She was transferred to a hospital in Nottingham. The doctors in Nottingham found needle tracks under her armpit and an air bubble near the puncture mark. And it was said that this small air bubble almost killed her. But somehow, Gibbs, they assumed that it was an accident and an investigation was never opened. And this is one of the things that I think we see in a lot of these kind of doctor/nurse murder cases.
Yeah.
Now, maybe it's easy to look back on it and see the signs. Maybe it's a little tougher when you're in the throes of it. But, why would a 1-year-old have needle tracks under her armpit? Maybe we should check that out.
I want to dig in a little deeper.
Right. Figure out what happened, who did that, because it almost killed her. And, the other part for me is just this lack of opening investigations. I think that's all too common as well in these types of cases.
Yeah, what does it hurt to open up the investigation, dive into it a little bit, and then make your determination? Yeah,
if nothing's wrong, nothing's wrong. On March 20th, 1991, 5-month-old Paul Crampton came to the hospital for a non-serious bronchial infection. His mother brought him in because she noticed that he was wheezing. Paul was recovering well and was scheduled to go home after 3 days in the hospital. But on the day of his expected discharge, as Beverly was doing her rounds, she called in the crash team. It was like all of a sudden, Gibbs, Paul was having trouble breathing. He was suffering from insulin shock and almost went into a coma 3 different times. Now, the doctors revived him, but they couldn't explain the fluctuation in his insulin levels. So 3 days later, Paul was expected to go home again. His father had been staying at the hospital with him. At one point, he left for about 20 minutes to get something to eat. When he returned, he saw his son Paul struggling to breathe. So they transferred Paul to Nottingham, and Beverly actually rode in the ambulance with him. When he arrived at Queen's Medical Center, his insulin levels had surged again.
Well, I bet they did.
But Paul recovered and survived without any long-term effects.
She really did try to get rid of him, though, didn't she?
Yeah, and again, you have a nurse who in the span of, a few weeks, has had 3 of these kind of crash team situations. A couple of them, at the very least, seem like they just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But again, I go back to, okay, nobody at the hospital can kind of explain, right, why his insulin shot up so high. Are we not going to look into that?
No. Are we not going to say who was with him right before his insulin levels shot up? What was going on right before that?
And it wouldn't kind of pique somebody's interest that the same person was tending to these patients when these bad things happen.
Yeah.
On March 21st, 1991, 5-year-old Bradley Gibson, who was in the hospital for pneumonia, went into sudden cardiac arrest. The resuscitation team was called in again. They barely saved him. And again, blood tests revealed high insulin levels. The doctors were confused, but just like in the previous one, they just didn't question it all that much. Beverly cared for him that night, and he went into cardiac arrest again. Now, he too was transferred to Nottingham and made a full recovery. So again, I don't want to harp on it. I don't want to belabor it, but okay, they're not doing good at the hospital.
No.
But they're transferred to another hospital and they make a full recovery.
I would think the people at Nottingham are going, what is going on at the other hospital?
And the people at, that hospital where Beverly worked really should have been looking into it. On March 22nd, 1991, 2-year-old Yik Hung Chan experienced a respiratory collapse. Beverly raised the alarm, called in the crash team. Yik Hung responded well to oxygen treatment. Doctors transferred him to Nottingham after a second respiratory emergency. He recovered fully, but all his symptoms were attributed to a skull fracture, which was the reason that he was in the hospital in the first place. So, in those types of situations, okay, I get that.
Right.
When you talk about, this young boy, when you talk about the boy that had epilepsy, I could see where maybe those don't raise as much suspicion as some of the other ones we talked about.
Yeah.
The other thing to keep in mind, we've just talked about 3 youngsters, a 5-month-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. These happened on successive days.
Yeah.
March 20th, March 21st, March 22nd. And to me, the first 2, there really was nothing that would point to, why what happened to them happened. The next victims were 2-month-old twins, Katie and Becky Phillips. They had been in the hospital for observation due to being born premature, but they were both sent home. Becky's parents brought her to the ward for gastroenteritis on April 1st. Beverly managed her care at night. On the 3rd, Beverly raised an alarm. Becky appeared hypoglycemic. She was cold to the touch. But doctors found nothing wrong with her and they sent her home. But on the first night home, Becky experienced convulsions and she seemed to be in extreme pain. So her parents rushed her back to the hospital. The doctors said it was just colic and they sent her back home. Becky died that night, but they did do an autopsy and no clear cause of death was found.
Very tragic, but I feel like it's going to get worse.
Oh, it is. It is. Now, early on I talked about how vulnerable you are sometimes in the hospital, but we're talking about kids.
Right.
And, to me, that's even more scary than talking about you or I or, an adult being vulnerable. We all know how we feel about our kids. We do anything to protect them. But what if you can't?
Yeah.
Because you're entrusting their care to a professional.
Yeah, because you don't know any better. You assume whatever those nurses and doctors are doing, it's the correct thing to do.
Sure. Because that's what they're trained to know how to do and all of that.
And what they're doing when you're not there, you're assuming that it's the right thing. Like, don't worry, go home, get some rest. We'll take care of little Johnny. I would think stories like this probably make your mom and other people that are in the nurse field sick.
Yeah, I mean, this story is going to make everybody a little sick, but I definitely get what you mean because my wife has kind of the same thing as a teacher.
Yeah.
She gets upset when she watches a TV show and they kind of make teachers look like buffoons. Now, it's a little different, right? We're not talking about killing anybody.
Right.
She gets upset when teachers are like the butt of the joke and all of that. But let's face it, there are some bad teachers.
There are.
And some are better than others. I think anytime you're in a profession and there's somebody that makes that profession look bad, you're going to get upset about that.
Yeah.
But when it involves hurting children, you're going to get sick about it.
Oh, for sure.
So one of these 2-month-old twins has died. The pediatricians urged the parents to bring Katie in for observation for a few days, just as a precaution. And it was Beverly who cared for Katie at night. One evening, she called in the resuscitation team for a respiratory collapse. The team revived Katie, but 2 days later, she experienced a lung collapse. Katie was transferred to Nottingham. Doctors in Nottingham found that 5 of her ribs were broken and that she had serious brain damage from oxygen deprivation.
Well, how does something so little have broken ribs?
Yeah, they described it as having had to have come from, what they called squeeze injuries, meaning someone most likely intentionally harmed her. Katie also suffered from partial paralysis, cerebral palsy, and hearing and vision damage. So think about these parents.
Yeah, they lost one child and another one is
gravely injured.
Yeah.
In a matter of a number of days. But again, Gibbs, no one suspected Beverly Allitt. In fact, Katie's mother was so grateful to Beverly that she asked her to be Katie's godmother. And Beverly actually accepted.
Man, what a monster she is.
So you can't tell me that this person, Beverly Allitt, had an unbelievable guilty conscience.
No.
There's just no way.
No.
If anything, I think she was reveling in the destruction, the pain, the death that she was causing to accept to be this girl's godmother.
Wow.
Knowing that you had forever negatively impacted this child's life.
Sure, yeah.
How could you do that?
She's a monster.
On April 22nd, 15-month-old Claire Peck was admitted to the hospital. She suffered from asthma and she needed a breathing tube. But just after a few minutes in Beverly's care, she experienced a heart attack. Now, the resuscitation team saved her, but Claire had a second heart attack while Beverly was working. And this time the crash team could not revive her. But an autopsy determined that Claire died of natural causes. So we've had a number of deaths. We've had a number of injuries to children in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
At some point, the hospital is going to become worried.
And they need to be worried.
And they did, right? They became concerned about the high number of infant deaths. And I think especially concerned because, most of these cases involve children who were admitted for non-serious health problems.
Yeah, that should be a huge red flag.
So after 2 months, it took 2 months, but the hospital staff became suspicious of Beverly. And Gibbs, how could they not? She always seemed to be involved when a child had a medical emergency.
Yeah.
And then, add on top of that what we said, right? Once these kids were transferred to another hospital, they got better.
Which should be a tell sign.
Did you just say telltale?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew what you were trying to say, so we'll just go with it.
Let's go with that. I'm a little under the weather.
I'm going to point it out anyway.
Yeah.
Because that's what I do.
You do that.
Dr. Nana Yakara, one of the pediatricians on staff, started an inquiry. Gibbs, he was concerned about the high number of cardiac arrests in the children's ward over the 2-month period. Doctors initially suspected there was some type of airborne virus, but they found nothing. He and the senior nursing manager looked through all the death reports and sent them to the village general manager. The doctor expressed concern about the high number of sudden child deaths, and he asked for help in his inquiry. On April 30th, the hospital contacted the police to begin an investigation into the child deaths. And obviously, that is something that should have happened.
Sure.
I think you could, and a lot of people might make the argument that it should have happened sooner.
Well, with these hospitals, there's certainly a lot of politics that are played.
Yeah, there's red tape, and I get the fact that, a hospital really doesn't want to call attention to the fact that something is going on.
Right.
Now, they also don't want nurses who are doing bad things. I get that as well. It just seems like, okay, maybe they could have started a little quicker.
Right.
Looking into it.
But you certainly don't want to be known as the hospital that had a murderer working for you.
No, people are going to start avoiding you at all costs.
Right.
but you, at the same time, you also don't want a murderer working for you. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword.
Right.
You don't want people not to come to your hospital, but you got to start an investigation to figure out if something bad is going on. We mentioned it, but Dr. Nanayakara and Dr. Porter had differing opinions on the cases. Dr. Porter believed the children's deaths could be explained by medical reasons, while Dr. Nanayakara believed someone working for the hospital was involved.
Well, I guess you probably could technically find a reason why it happened at the hospital naturally.
Yeah, I'm sure you could explain it away if you tried hard enough. And I'm not saying that this doctor did anything wrong. He may have really believed that. Now, it turns out he was wrong. We know that. So police came to the hospital on May 10th, 1991. Detective Superintendent Stuart Clifton led the investigation. He examined other suspicious cases over the past 2 months and found that many of the children had abnormally high insulin levels. He checked all the records. He interviewed parents. He also had a security camera installed. His record checks revealed missing daily logs, which corresponded to the time when Paul Crampton was in the ward. Clifton asked Dr. David Hall, a physician outside the hospital, to look into these cases. Hull reported that only 3 of the 13 cases needed further review. 2 cases could have a medical explanation, but he said at the very least, Paul Crampton's case needed further investigation. So, all right, so if we take this into account, Gibbs, this is an independent doctor. He doesn't work at the hospital. He too is kind of thinking that the majority of these cases can be medically explained.
Right.
So maybe that does point or give some credence to why the hospital didn't act as quickly as maybe we think they should have. You know, one of their own doctors is saying, hey, I don't really see anything suspicious here. Now another one is, but
Right.
I think when you have a third doctor who's independent kind of saying the same thing, with the exception of the Paul Crampton case, maybe it's not as clear cut as what it seemed to me.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Dr. Porter took a blood sample from Paul before he was transferred to Nottingham. He sent the sample to a university hospital and had it tested. Paul's insulin level was 47,000 milliunits per liter. And it was reported, Gibbs, this was the second highest ever recorded in world history.
Well, there's the immediate problem.
Well, to put it in perspective, a normal insulin level for a baby Paul's age is around 15. Not 15,000, 15. And his was at 47,000.
Wow.
Dr. Nanayakara also saved some of Becky Phillips' blood samples. She had over 9,000 milliunits per liter of insulin in her blood. When Detective Clifton got the report about the blood results, he became concerned that there could possibly be a serial killer on the children's ward. He decided to review all the cases again, going back to Liam Taylor. And I get that. How could you not be incredibly concerned?
Oh, for sure. It's alarming.
Don't let allergy season slow you down. Get common allergy meds for as little as $15 with GoodRx. So you and your family, pets included, can stop allergy symptoms before they start. GoodRx is free and easy to use. Just search for your prescription on the website or the app, compare prices, and get a free coupon to show your pharmacist. Save at over 70,000 local pharmacies nationwide, including Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Publix, Kroger, and many more. Check GoodRx before every trip to the pharmacy to save up to 80% on both brand and generic medications. And did you know GoodRx rewards you for saving money too? Join GoodRx Rewards today and earn points every time you use a coupon. Remember, GoodRx is not insurance, but works whether you have insurance or not. And it could be your insurance copay price. I've been using GoodRx for years, and I can't tell you how many times I have saved money even with my insurance. Stop allergies before they start and save big on allergy medications this season with GoodRx. go to goodrx.com/TCAT. That's goodrx.com/TCATT. You know, once the temps start rising, I realized I was back in the same worn out rotation. Same tank, same shorts, same everything. So I gave my daily uniform an upgrade with Quince. Their pieces are easy, elevated, and somehow make me feel more put together without even trying. Like they're 100% European linen shorts and dresses from $30. Luxe swimwear, Italian leather platform sandals, and so much more. The best part, everything with Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than what you'd find at similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middleman, Quince gives you luxury without the markup. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I'm getting ready to stock up on shorts for summer from Quince, and I know they're going to be amazing because everything I've ordered has been of the highest quality, and the prices are amazing. Treat your closet to a little summer glow up with Quince. Go to quince.com/TCAT for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/TCATT to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/TCAT. It was around this time that a local radio station reporter, Sean Dunderdale, exposed the case and got word out to the public for the first time. The police were forced to contact all the parents of potential victims. And I think Gibbs, at first, these parents didn't really believe that a staff member would want to hurt their children.
Well, it's just not something you would ever think could happen.
No, it goes back to everything we've been saying, right? You put so much trust into healthcare professionals. You almost have to. You don't have any other choice. Unless you have some type of medical training yourself,
Right.
You have to trust these people. Some of these parents didn't even think the police should be involved in a hospital investigation. But as they learned more information, I think they changed their minds.
And why wouldn't you? You know, you want to know, did something happen to my child when he was at, or she was at the hospital?
Yeah, because at first you're thinking, no way.
Right.
But as evidence starts to come out, then I think you're absolutely right. You would naturally think, oh my gosh, did something like this happen to my child? And I want it investigated. I want to know. So the investigation continued. Through staff interviews, the police learned that Beverly always called in other nurses to look at a sick child before she called in the crash team. And obviously, Gibbs, this was a tactic, right, that she was using to hopefully take the attention away from herself.
Yeah, I can see why she did it. And obviously it worked for a while, right?
Maybe it was another reason why they didn't suspect her as much as maybe we thought they should have. Clifton interviewed the staff and learned that insulin was kept in locked fridges on all of the wards. In the children's ward, the key went missing 3 days before Liam Taylor collapsed. And it was learned that Beverly Allitt was the last person to have the key. Clifton also found out that Beverly Allitt reported the key missing.
So she had it last, she reported it missing, and now maybe they know why.
Yeah, I think when you break it down, right, 25 cases, 13 victims, 4 deaths. And in all of them, the one common factor was Beverly Allitt. She was the only nurse on duty during all of the suspicious incidents.
It's not looking good for Beverly.
No, not at all. Because on May 21st, Detective Clifton arrested Beverly Allitt. The police searched her home and found parts of the missing nursing log. They also found a hospital pillowcase, a used syringe, and a notebook labeled allocations book. And it was inside this notebook where she had detailed the names of children who needed extra attention, which medications they took with doses, and which nurse was assigned to them. According to Real Crime, during her interrogation, Beverly denied attacking the children and said that she was just doing her job. They held her for 2 days, but she didn't make any type of confession. When asked, she would only respond, "I wasn't there that day," or "I didn't come on duty until after that happened." and she claimed that she took the allocation book to compile a diary. But the search team never found a diary in her home.
Well, it's easy to deny.
Deny, deny, deny. Yeah, it's easy to deny. Now, it's harder once the evidence starts piling up against you for those denials to be believed. I want to go back to this diary. Okay, a lot of people keep a diary, a journal, thoughts, feelings, kind of a snapshot in time, if you will, of what was going on in their life.
Yeah.
That they can look back later on. I don't understand why you would want to compile a diary of the patients that you took care of, what medications they took, and which nurses were assigned to them. That part I don't understand. One officer reported to the Independent that Beverly was confident and that she even challenged them during the interrogation. He said, usually when somebody lies, they pause before answering a question. She didn't. She came right out with the answer and dared us to prove otherwise. At that stage, we couldn't. She knew more about Ward 4 than we did. So you said, deny, deny, deny.
Right.
I think that was part of it. The other part was she was very confident in her denials. She obviously knew the inner workings of the hospital and specifically Ward 4 much better than the police officers. And this officer is telling the paper, hey, we couldn't dispute what she was saying because we didn't have the evidence to do it. In fact, they didn't even have enough evidence to keep Beverly in custody.
So she gets released without being charged.
Which is a scary thought.
Sure.
You have the police believing that this woman's a serial killer, but they don't have enough evidence to charge her. They have to let her go. Now, Clifton did ask the hospital to suspend her at the very least so that she couldn't hurt any more children.
Well, thank goodness for that.
Clifton pleaded with Dr. Hull to look at the case notes again, and he agreed, but it did take him several months to look through everything. Clifton also recruited insulin expert Vincent Marks and John Emery and David Fagan, who were both pathologists. They analyzed x-rays, blood, tissue, and organ samples. 2 detectives were assigned to review each case. Professor Marks found that Becky had been given a massive dose of insulin before her death. A ward journal with details of the daily nursing schedule was found, with pages about Becky's collapse ripped out. Okay, pretty suspicious.
Really suspicious.
Testing revealed that Claire Peck had a high amount of potassium in her blood. When her remains were exhumed, examiners found traces of lignocaine in her system. It's not something I'm familiar with. Not even sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it was said that this was a drug used to treat cardiac arrest, but that it would never have been used in infants.
Yeah, for adults, but not infants.
Right.
Scary.
On July 26th, the police felt that they finally had enough evidence to charge Beverly, but they didn't formally charge her until November of 1991. So again, we're still all in the same year. Dr. Hall had finished his review of the case notes, and he now agreed that all of the cases could be regarded as suspicious. So this was important, right? Because we said after his initial review, I think he said, 3 were suspicious, but really only the Crampton child was really, really suspicious.
So this is a big change for him.
It's a huge change because now he's saying that all of them could be regarded as suspicious. Background checks revealed Beverly's strange behavior growing up and indicated a possible personality disorder. Doctors also suspected she had Munchausen syndrome or Munchausen syndrome by proxy, and the thought was Beverly was unable to get attention by hurting herself, so she hurt children to get the attention she wanted. Beverly was arrested again on November 20th, 1991. But again, she refused to confess. But she was eventually charged with 4 counts of murder, 11 counts of attempted murder, and 11 counts of causing grievous bodily harm.
I did find it strange while she waited for her trial, Beverly lost 70 pounds and developed anorexia. Was that because she wanted more attention in her way?
Well, it could have been. It also definitely significantly delayed her trial. Right? She missed a lot of time in court. So I think you can look at it a couple of different ways. Maybe it was another attempt to try to get attention. Maybe it was done to delay the trial, kind of throw a monkey wrench into the justice system, because it wasn't until February 15th, 1993, that Beverly finally went to trial at the Nottingham Crown Court. She pleaded not guilty to all charges. Prosecutors presented every piece of evidence they had. Number one, Beverly was present during each of these suspicious cases. I think secondly, Gibbs, all of the problems stopped when she left the ward. That's pretty big.
Yeah.
You know, we sometimes talk about that with other types of serial killers, right? Both solved and unsolved cases, how all of a sudden, sometimes after a person is known to have left the area, the murders stop. Okay. Does that tell you something? Well, possibly it does. They presented medical records showing excessive potassium and insulin levels in the victims. They also presented photos of injection and puncture marks. The prosecution also accused her of depriving children of oxygen by smothering them or tampering with machines. And I think, one of the things that clearly came out in the research of this case was that very few people in the community believed that these charges against Beverly could be true.
Well, why would they, right? This is a nurse at a kid's hospital. You would think that they only want to protect the child, never hurt it.
Right. You'd never think that a nurse would harm her patients, especially small children. I think the other thing that people pointed to was that, okay, the prosecution had evidence, but it was all circumstantial, right? Where's the smoking gun? Where's the kind of thing that proves that she did all this? It was reported that Beverly even smiled at some of the victims' families who were watching the trial, hoping to win their favor, get them on her side. But as the trial continued, right, and more evidence came out, the parents and the public definitely changed their minds. But not Beverly's parents. They believe she was innocent.
Well, they're her parents.
Yeah, and I think we've said before, right? What parent wants to believe that their child, even as an adult, the person that they raised, could be responsible for such heinous crimes?
Yeah.
Nobody. Richard Allitt told The Guardian, "We believe Beverly is innocent because we do not think she had it in her to do the things they say she did. She has always looked after babies in the village, and lots of parents have trusted her with their children. They thought she was marvelous." The defense discussed Beverly's history of mental illness and explained her official diagnosis of Munchausen by proxy. Professor Roy Meadow, a pediatrics expert, gave his opinion that Beverly could never be cured, and she was dangerous to anyone she met. And this was important. This guy was the first pediatrician to identify Munchausen syndrome by proxy in 1977. So, not only do you have a pediatrics expert testifying, you have the very man who kind of identified this syndrome.
Can't get any better than that.
He labeled it as a form of child abuse where the caregiver deliberately induces or lies about illnesses to get attention. He testified that individuals with Munchausen syndrome do not set out to cause harm, but the benefit of getting the attention outweighs the harm. And we've seen that in so many different cases.
Right, yeah.
Just go back to the Blanchard case.
Yeah.
I think some of that kind of started out small, right? To get attention, to get sympathy. But as time went on, the lies got bigger. The illnesses were reported to be much more severe. And there's no doubt that Dee Dee did an unimaginable amount of harm to Gypsy.
She really did, yeah.
There's just no way around it.
And she did so much harm to her, it drove Gypsy to some unspeakable acts.
Yeah, it resulted in Dee Dee's murder. The jury had 26 charges to consider, and they spent over a week deliberating in a local hotel. On May 14th, 1993, the jury found Beverly guilty of murdering Becky Phillips and Claire Peck. They also found her guilty of causing grievous bodily harm to Kaylee Desmond and 2 other children. She was acquitted of attempted murder charges for all 3 victims. And then later that day, the jury convicted her of murdering Liam Taylor. On the 15th, the jury found Beverly guilty of the attempted murder of Paul Crampton. Beverly was acquitted of attempting to murder an elderly woman and a 15-year-old. She was also acquitted of causing them grievous bodily harm. And on May 29th, 1993, Beverly was convicted of murdering Timothy Hardwick. She received 13 life sentences for her charges. This was the harshest sentence ever given to a woman in Britain. Beverly was ordered to serve a minimum term of 40 years. And it was said, Gibbs, that she wasn't present at her sentencing. She hadn't been in court since March the 12th. So sounds like a lot of this went on without her.
Right.
But let's go back to the 13 life sentences, the harshest sentence ever given to a woman in Britain. I understand that. As a member of that jury, many of whom probably had children of their own, how could you not throw the book at this woman?
Well, you certainly didn't want her on the streets ever again.
No, you don't want her around anyone. She's obviously extremely dangerous.
Yeah, if you can hurt an infant, you can hurt anybody.
Sure. There is no boundary, right? There is no line that you won't cross. The judge said at her sentencing hearing, she should face humane containment in order to protect the public, with no real prospects that a time will ever come when you could safely be released. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Beverly was ordered to serve her sentence at Rampton Secure Hospital in Nottingham, a high security facility for individuals detained under the Mental Health Act. According to biography.com, many of the victims' families were angry because they said Rampton is more like a holiday camp than a prison.
And the facility costs taxpayers $3,000 a week per inmate. It seems pretty costly.
Yeah, it's like $150,000 a year.
Yeah.
That is a ton of money. Beverly later interviewed with Central Television. According to Real Crime, they filmed her inside the facility sewing and doing other activities. She told the journalist, "It's not too bad. I've got more freedom, not locked up all the time." And I think that right there would piss the families off.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Because, if you saw that on television, she's sewing, she's doing recreational activities, you would not be happy.
Well, she's saying,
it's not too bad up in here.
I'd say, well, then it needs to be changed because it should be bad for her.
It should be bad. Beverly's self-harming behavior continued at the hospital. It was reported, Gibbs, that she ate glass and she poured boiling water on herself.
That's a way to get attention. The wrong type of attention, but it's a way to get attention.
Well, I don't know for people who have this syndrome if there really is a wrong kind of attention.
Yeah.
They're out to get, it seems like, any type of attention. Look at me. Feel bad for me. And if I have to do something to hurt myself to get it, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Beverly finally confessed to 3 murders and 6 assaults during an interview with Detective Clifton on October 14th, 1993. But she never would admit, Gibbs, to anything about hurting the twins, Becky and Katie Phillips. In May 2005, it was revealed that Beverly had received over $40,000 in state benefits since her incarceration. So that not only outraged the family of the victims, that outraged the public.
Oh, it's ridiculous. $40,000?
Because they're paying for it.
Sure. And if that made the public upset, they're going to be even more upset in the following years.
Yeah, the next year, Beverly applied for a review of her sentence. Her request was accepted, and on December 6, 2007, a high court in London ruled that Beverly's minimum sentence should be 30 years rather than 40. And it came out that the exact sentence was 28 years and 175 days, accounting for the 1 year and 190 days she had already spent in custody. But what this did, Gibbs, is it meant that Beverly would be about 54 years old.
Yeah.
At the time that she was first considered for parole. The Guardian reported that Justice Stanley Burnton said in court, "I have found that there is an element of sadism in Miss Allitt's conduct and her offending, but that sadism is itself, if not the result, certainly a manifestation of her mental disorder, and it would be unduly simplistic to treat it in the same way as one would if the offender were mentally well. By her actions, what should have been a place of safety for its patients became not just a place of danger, but if not a killing field, something close to it." So he's kind of saying a lot there.
He is.
I mean, I think the hospital for that short period of time did become kind of a killing field, for the lack of a better term. But at the same time, you know, he's saying that you can't treat this woman the same way as you would treat a serial killer who had no mental deficiencies. And I get that. I think there are people that agree with that. Probably a lot of people who agree with that, right? There's always been that argument here in the US that we should not be putting people to death,
right,
who are mentally ill. I don't think they did treat her the same. Obviously, she went to kind of a state-run mental hospital as opposed to kind of a full-blown prison. And to be honest with you, I don't have an issue with any of that. I think now the family probably does, and I wouldn't blame them if they did. My issue is always going to come down to, should this person be let out? Are they capable of living in the public without putting everyone around them in danger? And it seems as though at least the people that have looked at her, professionals, have said, no, she's going to be a danger to everyone she meets.
So don't let her out.
No doubt, Beverly's actions affected the entire community. The maternity unit at Grantham and Kesteven Hospital eventually shut down.
Well, I'm sure the parents were terrified to take their children to that hospital.
Wouldn't you be?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't want anything to do with that hospital.
If it was splashed all over the news that a nurse there killed patients,
yeah,
it's kind of something that would be really hard to get rid of.
You need to change the name and put under new management, new whatever. And that might not even be enough.
No, if there's another hospital remotely close, I'll just go there.
Yeah. I mean, growing up here where we're from, there was a hospital in town here that had so much negative publicity around it that I remember when you did the medical forms at the beginning of every school year, my parents used to write, "Do not take him to blank hospital if something occurred." And I know my friends, their parents did the same thing. We knew we were not going to go to a certain hospital if anything ever happened to us, because it was just a lot of negativity around it.
Just shows that your parents really cared about you.
Well, yeah.
Kaylee Asher and her parents spoke to the Mirror in August 2021. Kaylee is now 31 years old. Alan and Sharon Asher adopted her when she was a toddler. And she talked about it, Gibb. She's terrified of Beverly Allitt ever getting out of prison. Kaylee often asked her father, "Will she come and get me?" Alan told the Mirror, "Kaylee looks under her bed and wardrobe for Allitt. This can go on for days and days. And often we find her in the early morning hours searching."
Isn't that terrible, man? That some victim has to go through this day after day.
Well, and that's the thing when you talk about someone who is victimized. It's not just solely about what happens to them in that moment.
Yeah.
They have to live with the repercussions often for the rest of their lives.
It's the terrible things that come afterwards.
This woman's 31 years old and she is scared to death because of what this woman did. And this is a pretty timely case because Beverly's minimum term expired in November of 2021. She can apply for review this year in 2022, but her sentence won't be considered until November of 2023.
It's pretty quick, pretty soon coming up.
It could come up very quickly. If she is deemed fit, she could be transferred to a regular prison, and then she would be eligible to apply for parole. And I think many people in Britain are unsure what will happen in the coming years. There has to be a lot of people who are fearful that Beverly will be released on parole and may harm more people. I think the overall sentiment, Gibbs, is the same one that we talked about. People do not believe that she should ever be released from custody.
Yeah, I agree. If you can hurt a child, you can hurt anything.
Well, and that's the thing. You get little to no compassion from people when you hurt children. There's just no doubt about it.
Yeah, and it seems like she still has the same syndrome. If she's pouring hot water on her body, if she's swallowing glass, if she still has that issue, how's that going to change when she gets out? That she might decide to start hurting other people to get the same type of attention.
Well, and the one professional said, this is not something that will ever be cured. So, okay, she's probably never going to be able to get a job in nursing. I sure hope not anyway. But could she put an ad in the paper offering babysitting services? Could she do something where she could be around children again? Could she change her name? I mean, there's a lot of things to think about. And I get it why many people would be concerned.
Yeah. I just, you know what? Like your mom's a nurse. We have good friends and family members that are nurses and
a lot of fans.
And a lot of fans that are nurses. And I don't think we would ever think that this could happen, that you would have to worry about bringing your child into a hospital and ever have to be concerned about someone wanting to harm them purposely. Scary.
It is scary, but I go back to my point. It doesn't matter the profession or how noble the profession is. There is the chance that you're going to have a bad apple who is going to do something unspeakable. I mean, it obviously happened in this case. Yeah. It happened in the Donald Harvey case in the U.S. that we did. And there are many other nurses that have done things, doctors, obviously, that have done things.
We've done a few other cases. She's definitely a bad apple.
I mean, that's a euphemism for sure. As we wrap up this case, Gibbs, I think bottom line, and we've talked about it, but all the victims' parents thought that they were taking their children to a place where they would be safe, where they would be treated, where there were people who cared about their children, wanted to help them. That's what we think. That's why we go to the children's hospital or, any hospital for that matter. Instead, these parents unknowingly put their children into the care of a serial killer. She's the boogie woman. I mean, Beverly Allitt is every parent's worst nightmare.
Yeah, she's a terror, man.
Her actions left a profound impact on the community. And like we said, she caused long-lasting trauma for her surviving victims and their families.
The hospital, probably even nurses in general, had to get a little bit of backlash on this.
I'm sure people were less trusting of nurses who had nothing to do with what Beverly Allitt did. And that's kind of the really bad thing about having a bad apple, right? What's the saying? A bad apple spoils the whole bunch.
Yeah.
It really is true. Now that goes away and you have nurses that have an immaculate track record. And so obviously that trust is regained.
Yeah. You have good nurses, then you have Nurse Ratchet.
But that's it for our case on Beverly Allitt. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's check them out.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Gibby. This is Chrissy from Maryland. Wanted to say how much I adore your show. I am a huge fan of TCAT Unsolved, and Criminology. So this is a shout out to Mike Morford as well. I discovered you guys just regular TCAT last March, so March 2021, while I was headed home, quick little road trip. It was a 4-hour road trip. Fell in love with the first episode that I listened to, so I started all the way from episode 1, worked my way through true crime all the time, and I finished that in July. Then I binged all of Criminology, and I was able to complete that, I want to say, end of November, December, and now I'm on TCAT Unsolved, and so I'm binging that. I really enjoy you guys. Keep up the awesome work. Love you. See you later. Bye.
Man, that's awesome. Marilyn in the house, and I love that she's listening to both of the T-Cats.
It's awesome. And Morph even got a shout out.
Who's that? What's this Criminology stuff? I don't understand.
Very much appreciated.
Hi, my name's Haley Valderas from Garland, Texas, and can I just say I love y'all's podcast. I work from home and, just binge it all day and sometimes at night. It's awesome. I love y'all's jokes and just how y'all go through everything. Can't wait to keep binging the show. Y'all have a great day.
Short and sweet.
I heard this work from home thing's really taking off now.
Yeah, I heard it is too. Coming from someone who's been working from home for quite a while.
Yeah.
You have been.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
I've been working from home ever since they said, we don't want you here anymore.
Is it really called working from home and what you're doing?
I don't know. I don't know what you call it. I'm just home.
Lounging in the basement.
I'm just home.
Yeah.
Working in the basement.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. My name is Anna, and I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I have recently subscribed to your podcast, and I'm loving it. So thank you so much for all that you do. I just wanted to run something by you, though. I got into the Michael Blagg case a couple of years ago, and I thought it could be a topic that you guys might want to cover on your show. Michael Blagg murdered his wife and his daughter, and there's a lot of twists and turns, and I think the big question still remains as to why. I think there's a lot of speculation, but I don't know if they've ever quite figured out why he did what he did. So I thought you guys might have some answers. So love your show. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for the voicemail. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that case is on the list, but I'll check it, double check it, make sure. Sounds like it's up our alley, right? We love cases with some twists and turns, and I'm okay with cases with some lingering questions.
She needs to work on her Minnesota accent. Should be Minnesota.
Was she from Minnesota?
She said I'm from Minnesota, but she didn't say it like that. She said I'm from Minnesota.
Well, there are different parts of Minnesota.
No, it's all Minnesota.
You crack me up. Just like there are different accents in England or
British,
Florida. A state like Florida can have like 3 different accents
Florida's
easily.
like, hey, I'm from Florida, man. That's how it goes. I'm from Florida. There's no, different accent.
Gibbs, we had mailbag. Adriana Couch sent us a package with mugs, shirts, candy, Harley chips. There was all kinds of stuff in there.
Eat some of the candy right now.
Amy Bacon sent us a big package as well. Had all kinds of treats in there.
Yeah.
Hot sauce for you.
Just took a swig. Yeah.
Just to see what it was like.
Yeah. Pretty
Just
hot.
a lot of Southern stuff.
Yeah. I like
And
Southern.
yeah, we do. We love that. So we appreciate all of that. All right, buddy. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time. So for Mike
And Gibby.
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Inspired by the hit Wondery podcast Against the Odds comes the gripping guidebook, How to Survive Against the Odds, Tales and Tips for Animal Attacks and Natural Disasters. This might just be the most important book you'll ever read. Go inside life or death situations where everyday people survived nature's most extreme scenarios. And learn how you can too. In these tales, you'll hear about the grit, willpower, and know-how needed to endure shipwrecks, alligator attacks, earthquakes, and more. You'll learn from experts, including top doctors, about what happens to your body and mind in life-threatening situations. Plus, important tips on what to do, and equally important, what not to do when faced with a situation that is truly against the odds. Go to survivalguidebook.com to pre-order How to Survive Against the Odds today and get the perfect gift in time for graduation and Father's Day.